What if Princess Diana's final words revealed the truth about what really happened in that Paris tunnel? On August 31st, 1997, at 4 a.m., Diana, Princess of Wales, took her last breath in a Paris hospital. But in the hours between the crash at 12:23 a.m. and her death, Diana was conscious. She was speaking, and multiple witnesses heard what she said. Some of her words were mundane, confused, the fragments of a dying woman in shock. But others were specific, deliberate, and, according to some witnesses, deeply disturbing. This is the investigation into Diana's final moments, the last words she spoke, and why the accounts of what she said differ so dramatically. Did Diana reveal who killed her? Did she call out for Dodi, for her sons, for help? Or did she simply ask what happened, unable to comprehend that her life was ending? The truth about Diana's last words has been hidden, contradicted, and debated for nearly 3 decades, until now. Let's start with the immediate aftermath of the crash. At 12:23 a.m., the Mercedes carrying Diana, Dodi Fayed, Henri Paul, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones slammed into the 13th pillar of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The impact was catastrophic. Henri Paul died instantly, his chest crushed by the steering column. Dodi Fayed was killed immediately, thrown forward with such force that his internal injuries were unsurvivable. Trevor Rees-Jones, the only person wearing seatbelt, suffered horrific facial injuries but would survive. And Diana, thrown forward by the impact, sustained massive internal trauma but remained alive. The first person to reach the wreckage was Dr. Frederic Mailliez, a French emergency physician who happened to be driving through the tunnel. He saw the mangled Mercedes, stopped his car, and ran to help. In interviews given years later, Dr. Mailliez described what he found: a blonde woman in the back seat, conscious but clearly in distress. He didn't recognize her at first. The scene was chaotic: twisted metal, broken glass, the smell of gasoline and blood. He knelt beside the woman and tried to assess her condition. She was struggling to breathe. Her eyes were open but unfocused, and she was trying to speak. Dr. Mailliez has given several accounts of Diana's first words. In his most detailed interview, he said Diana repeated one phrase over and over in English: "My God, what's happened?" Not a scream, not a cry for help, just a confused, shocked question. She seemed unable to comprehend what had occurred. Dr. Mailliez later said he believed Diana didn't realize how seriously injured she was. From the outside, she appeared relatively intact. No visible blood on her face, no obviously broken bones. But internally, she was catastrophically injured. Her pulmonary vein had been torn by the impact, and she was bleeding into her chest cavity. Without immediate surgery, she would die within hours. French emergency services arrived at 12:32 a.m., 9 minutes after the crash. Firefighters and paramedics took over from Dr. Mailliez. And here's where the accounts begin to diverge. According to official reports, Diana remained conscious and continued speaking intermittently as rescue workers stabilized her. Fire Officer Sergeant Xavier Gourmelon, who helped extract Diana from the wreckage, gave an interview in 2017 describing her condition. He said Diana was alert, moving slightly, and speaking. But when asked what she said, Gourmelon's account differed from Dr. Mailliez's. Gourmelon claimed Diana said nothing coherent initially, just moans and fragmented sounds. But then, as they prepared to move her onto a stretcher, she allegedly said clearly in English, "My God, what's happened to Dodi?" Not "what happened to me," but specifically asking about Dodi. If true, this suggests Diana was aware someone else was in the car and was concerned about them. But Gourmelon couldn't answer her. He didn't speak English well enough to understand fully. And even if he had, how do you tell a dying woman that the man beside her is already dead? But there's a problem with Gourmelon's account. He didn't reveal this detail until 20 years after Diana's death. In his initial statements to investigators in 1997 and during the British inquest in 2007 to 2008, he never mentioned Diana asking about Dodi. Why the change in story? Some suggest Gourmalin's memory became clearer over time. Others argue he embellished his account for media attention. The truth is impossible to determine. But the discrepancy raises questions about how reliable any witness testimony can be decades after the event. Another firefighter at the scene, Sergeant Philippe Boyer, gave a different account. He told investigators that Diana said nothing intelligible to him, just gasping and struggling to breathe. He focused on keeping her airway open and stabilizing her spine. He said her eyes were open, but she seemed to be fading in and out of consciousness. No words, no questions, just the physical fight to stay alive. Diana was extracted from the wreckage and placed into a French ambulance at approximately 12:50 a.m., nearly 30 minutes after the crash. And this is where the story becomes even more contested. The ambulance journey to Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital should have taken about 10 minutes. Instead, it took 1 hour and 43 minutes. The ambulance stopped multiple times. Diana's blood pressure crashed. Her heart stopped and had to be restarted with cardiac massage and adrenaline. Paramedics fought to keep her alive in that slow-moving ambulance while Paris slept, unaware that the world's most famous woman was dying just kilometers away. What did Diana say during that agonizing journey? French paramedics have given minimal information, citing patient confidentiality and the chaos of trying to save her life. But according to leaked reports and later testimonies, Diana regained consciousness at least once during the ambulance ride. And this is where the most disturbing alleged lost words appear. A British tabloid claimed in 2003 that a French paramedic, speaking on condition of anonymity, said Diana briefly regained consciousness and said, "They're trying to kill me. Don't let them kill me." The paramedic allegedly didn't understand English, but recognized the word kill and saw the terror in Diana's eyes. This account has never been verified. No paramedic has come forward publicly to confirm it. But the story persists in conspiracy circles because it aligns with the murder theory that Diana knew she was being assassinated and tried to warn rescuers. The problem is motive and credibility. If a paramedic truly heard Diana say something about being killed, why wouldn't they report it immediately? Why leak it anonymously 6 years later to a tabloid? And if Diana believed someone was trying to kill her, why was her first question, "What happened?" not, "Who did this?" The alleged quote feels too convenient, too perfectly aligned with conspiracy narratives to be entirely credible. Diana arrived at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital at 2 a.m. Surgeons immediately took her to the operating room. They opened her chest and found the torn pulmonary vein hemorrhaging blood. They performed cardiac massage manually, holding her heart in their hands, trying to repair the damage while keeping her alive. For 2 hours they fought, and during part of that time, Diana was intermittently conscious. Dr. Bruno Rieu, one of the anesthesiologists present, testified at the British inquest that Diana had moments of awareness during resuscitation. She moved slightly. Her eyes opened briefly, but he said she was beyond coherent speech at that point. She was in shock, her body shutting down, her brain deprived of oxygen. Any sounds she made were involuntary, not deliberate communication. But there's another account, unverified and controversial. A nurse who allegedly worked at the hospital claimed in an interview years later that Diana said something during those final moments in the operating room. The nurse claimed Diana whispered, "William, Harry," just their names, as if trying to send a final message to her sons. This account has never been confirmed by hospital officials, and the nurse remained anonymous, so we can't verify her identity or credibility. But if true, it would be heartbreaking. A mother's last thoughts going to her children. At 4 a.m. on August 31st, 1997, Diana's heart stopped for the final time. Surgeons continued cardiac massage for another 20 minutes, but it was futile. She was pronounced dead. Her last words, whatever they were, had been spoken, and the world would never know them with certainty. So what did Diana actually say in her final hours? Let's organize what we know versus what's claimed. Confirmed by credible witnesses. "My God, what's happened?" Dr. Frederic Mailliez, first responder. Moaning and gasping, no coherent speech. Multiple firefighters and paramedics. Claimed but unverified. "What's happened to Dodi?"
Firefighter Xavier Gourmelon revealed 20 years later. They're trying to kill me. Anonymous paramedic, tabloid report, never confirmed. William, Harry, anonymous nurse, unverified. The discrepancies are troubling. Why do accounts differ so much? Several explanations exist. First, language barriers. Diana spoke English. Most rescuers spoke French. Misunderstandings and mistranslations were inevitable in the chaos. Second, trauma and memory. People who experience traumatic events often have unreliable memories. Details get confused, timelines blur, words get misremembered. Third, media pressure. Every witness who came forward faced intense scrutiny and financial incentives to embellish their stories. Tabloids would pay significant money for dramatic quotes from Diana's final moments.
But there's a fourth, darker possibility: deliberate suppression. Conspiracy theorists argue that if Diana said anything implicating her attackers, if she mentioned names, if she said, "they did this," or "it was planned," those words would have been suppressed by authorities. French police and British intelligence would have ensured such statements never became public because they'd validate the murder theory and demand investigation into the royal family and MI6. The evidence for suppression is circumstantial. Some paramedics and hospital staff signed confidentiality agreements. Medical records from Diana's treatment were sealed for decades. Witnesses were questioned by intelligence services about what Diana said, and some claims they were pressured to keep quiet. But none of this proves a cover-up. Medical confidentiality is standard. Sealed records protect patient privacy, and witness interviews are normal investigative procedure. Let's consider what Diana's last words reveal about her state of mind and the crash itself. If her first words were, "My God, what's happened?" this suggests she didn't anticipate the crash. If it was a planned assassination and Diana was aware of the danger, you'd expect different words. "I knew they'd do this," or "they got me," or something indicating foreknowledge. But her shock and confusion suggests the crash surprised her completely. If she asked about Dodi, it shows concern for others even as she was dying. This aligns with everything we know about Diana's character. She was empathetic, caring, focused on others' suffering. Even mortally wounded, her thoughts went to the man beside her. If she said, "they're trying to kill me," it could indicate paranoia from trauma and oxygen deprivation, or it could be the truth spoken by a woman who knew she'd been targeted. Without verification, we can't know. And if her last word was her son's names, it's the most human and heartbreaking detail. A mother dying far from her children, wanting them to know she loved them, unable to say goodbye. But here's what haunts investigators and conspiracy theorists alike. Diana had written that letter to Paul Burrell, predicting her death in a car crash. She told friends she feared for her life. She'd said someone was planning to kill her. And then when the crash actually happened, her first words were a confused question, not a declaration of "I told you so" or an accusation. Why? If Diana genuinely believed she was in danger, if she'd predicted this exact scenario, wouldn't her dying words reflect that knowledge? Two explanations exist. First, the shock and trauma of the crash wiped away her pre-existing fears. In that moment, facing death, her paranoid predictions were forgotten, and she was simply a confused, injured woman trying to understand what happened. Second, and more conspiratorially, Diana's first words were accusations or revelations, but those were suppressed and replaced with the safer "what's happened" in official accounts. Muhammad al-Fayed believes the latter. He's claimed for decades that Diana said things in the ambulance and hospital that proved she was murdered, but that these statements were covered up by French and British authorities working together. He's never produced evidence, and no witness has confirmed his claims publicly, but his conviction remains absolute. There's one more detail worth examining: what Diana didn't say. She didn't call for the royal family, she didn't ask for Charles, for the Queen, for anyone at the palace. If her concern was Dodi and potentially her sons, that tells us where her loyalties and love truly were in those final moments, not with the institution that had rejected her, but with the man who loved her and the children she'd fought to protect. Trevor Rees-Jones, the only survivor of the crash, has no memory of Diana's last words.
He suffered traumatic brain injury and remembers nothing from the moments before impact through weeks after the crash. He's the one person who is conscious in the car with Diana, Henri, and Dodi, and his testimony could have resolved many questions. But his amnesia remains complete. Some conspiracy theorists suggest his memory was deliberately suppressed through drugs or psychological manipulation. Medical experts say traumatic brain injury causing memory loss is entirely normal and expected. The British inquest tried to establish definitively what Diana said. They called every witness, examined every statement, and tried to create a coherent timeline. Their conclusion was frustrating. Diana said, "My God, what's happened?" initially, then made various sounds and possibly spoke incoherently during transport and treatment, but nothing definitive or revelatory was recorded. They dismissed the "they're trying to kill me" claim as unverified rumor. They noted Gourmaland's claim about asking for Dodi, but couldn't confirm it. They found no evidence Diana named her attackers or revealed a conspiracy. But the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because the inquest found nothing definitive doesn't mean Diana said nothing important. It means either she didn't say anything significant, or what she said was successfully suppressed. Today, nearly 30 years later, we're left with fragments: a confused question in a tunnel, possible concern for Dodi, unverified claims of paranoid warnings and whispered names. Diana's last words remain as mysterious as her death itself. And perhaps that's fitting. Diana was the most photographed, most scrutinized woman in the world. Every moment of her public life was documented. But her final private moments, her last thoughts, her dying words, those remain hers alone.
What do you believe Diana's last words were? Do you think she simply asked what happened, confused and frightened? Do you believe she asked about Dodi, showing love and concern? Or do you think she revealed the truth about being murdered and her words were covered up? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This is one of the most emotional aspects of Diana's death, and every theory deserves consideration. If this investigation moved you, hit that like button and share it with anyone who wants to know the truth about Diana's final moments. Subscribe to Crown Conspiracies for more investigations into the details they tried to hide. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next mystery.